first day that I entered the prison and walked through the 7 or 8 gates to come to the education room where I was to teach, you could feel the tension and the stress in the environment. After the Unified Field-Based Rehabilitation Program was introduced and implemented to hundreds of inmates and staff at that institution, you could feel a settled quality, a calmness pervading the institution.
(1959), Bangkok, Thailand. Transcendental Meditation, a component of the Maharishi technology of the Unified Field, named for Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, is first applied as a rehabilitation program. 1971, Lompoc Federal Correctional Institution, USA. Scientific studies indicate an increase in positive behavior and a reduction in anxiety and disciplinary reports, or DRs, among inmates practicing the Transcendental Meditation technique. 1975, Folsom Prison. Violence drops markedly with the introduction of unified field-based rehabilitation. Reductions in inmate hostility, neuroticism, and insomnia are shown. 1982, San Quentin Prison, Dual Vocational Institute, Walpole State Prison. Scientists document long-term reductions in inmate return among released offenders who have participated in unified field-based programs. 1983, Vermont Department of Corrections. The program is made available to all staff and inmates statewide. Improvements in behavior and health are documented. The Transcendental Meditation, or TM technique, practiced for 15 or 20 minutes morning and evening, spontaneously produces a state of restful alertness, releases tension and fatigue, and prepares the individual for successful, dynamic activity. Art Anderson, partner of the McMath Law Firm, former director, Criminal Justice Division for the state of Arkansas.
I remember in Holland, Den Haag, where the World Court is, there are 2 words for justice: Gerechtigkeit and Rechtvaardig. The first, which is a much more harsh-sounding word, means the law of man that's imposed by the judge, that's enacted by the legislature, that's enforced by the police officer. And Rechtvaardig is the justice which flows naturally from the human heart, which allows a person to live in a harmonious fashion with his fellow man. It means things operating in accord with the laws of nature. It does not mean that we impose or superimpose or force orderliness or create some type of superstructure of orderliness and drop it on society. What justice means is that we elicit the harmony and the orderliness that is already there. And that, in the final analysis, is going to be the true hallmark of leadership in the years and decades to come, in criminal law and in society generally.
Don Hutto, President, American Correctional Association, Executive Vice President, Corrections Corporation of America.
Quite honestly, unless we can reduce violence and fear in an institution, almost anything else is impossible to accomplish. When one has to fear for their very safety, every waking moment, and then be afraid to sleep too, no other kinds of positive things are very possible.
You would have to actually be present in a prison to understand what the word tension means.
Like your freedom's gone, like you're in a cage and the air gets thin at times and it's like you're real closed in. It's a horrible feeling.
Everyone who has worked in corrections knows that high security is very stressful at times.
It was a vague fear. It was an anxiety if something might happen to me, and I wasn't sure exactly what. I didn't know what these people would do or how they would relate to me. And after meditating with them and learning the technique, I just didn't feel that anymore. There wasn't any need for it.
If all the staff and all the residents would have a certain time to meditate, I think that the calming effects would be beneficial to the institution, and I think that the disciplinary reports would go down. The high risk that is involved towards the officers would be nil.
Dr. George Ellis, author and program director, Institute for Social Rehabilitation.
A key element of reducing institutional violence is that the interpersonal relationships between the staff and the inmates and the inmates, and the staff must be workable. At least must be civil. At Folsom Prison, one correctional officer remarked to me that the con-bull relationship had broken down. In other words, people who he said he wanted to hit over the head before, who had now learned to meditate, he was having civil conversations with, and they were solving their problems with that animosity. So what resulted was that respect grew. The inmate did his time, the correctional officer did their time, but without the stress.
Of course, it has been shown that in a number of instances that the TM program contributes to the reduction of violence in institutions and also contributes to the reduction of stress in correctional employees, which leads, of course, to their ultimate health and reduced tensions in the institutions themselves.
During the summer of 1983, as part of an intensive statewide research project in Vermont correctional centers, inmates met daily to practice the TM technique.
Well, this summer was relatively quiet. Okay. I didn't have many DRs.
Because of my consistent meditation, I haven't had a DR in the last year, so I'm doing something right.
The population was manageable.
I've seen this past year has been pretty mellow. A lot of people I'm used to seeing swinging and cutting and jumping and hitting just seem to be sitting back and not saying much. Just the violence just isn't there.
There were times when we were very overcrowded when I did think that it was an essential factor contributing to some stability at some very, very crazy times when there was an enormous amount of people in our jails.
Feelings run pretty high around here, and you can't really put your finger on it. Just a lot of little incidents happen and a few big incidents, and they all seem to run together. And during that period of time, I just felt in this facility that those kind of things weren't happening. It was real quiet. People were going around going, it's awfully quiet in here. What's going on?
EEG research on brainwave activity shows that usually there is little coordination or coherence in electrical activity in different parts of the brain. In people practicing the TM technique, all parts of the brain begin to operate in a more coordinated, coherent manner, both during the practice of the technique and afterwards in daily life. Dr. Keith Wallace, co-director of neuroscience, Maharishi International University.
Very clear. After the person meditates, he feels better. His physiology is more expanded. Instead of a physiology which is sort of cramped and his mind says, oh, there's so many problems and so many difficulties and anger is expressed, he has a physiology of all possibilities. The mind flows smoothly, there's a lot of creativity in terms of the individual, and he just sees things clear.
There's a lot of situations, heated situations perhaps in court, where as a probation officer I'm put on the spot to relate my facts clearly in an orderly way, and I've found a much greater ability to do that through meditation.
When I first started doing the TM technique, I found that I could remember things that I couldn't, that I never thought I would ever be able to remember all at one time. And things were just a lot clearer and a lot easier to do, and I'm not as excitable as I might be otherwise.
This is not just a mood, it's not just an idea. You can show it very clearly in terms of biochemical studies, that as a result of TM there are very definite changes in neurotransmitters from the brain, these very delicate chemicals, and changes in the hormone system, changes in the metabolism. At almost every level there are very profound changes which can be directly associated with a more creative, with a more positive style of behavior.
When the body rests, oxygen consumption decreases. During sleep, the body gradually reduces oxygen consumption by about 8%. During practice of the TM technique, the mind remains alert, while profound levels of rest, twice as deep as sleep, are commonly found within the first few minutes, releasing stress and normalizing the physiology.
It's that one technique which allows the individual to balance all the different aspects of the physiology.
A natural result of this more balanced physiology is a reduced need for artificial stimulants. One study found that 21 months after beginning the program, 65% fewer people were using non-prescribed drugs, and 50% fewer were using alcohol and cigarettes.
It's impossible really to stop bad habits. The individual, if he's unsatisfied, if there's some sort of deep lack in him, he'll never be able to stop these bad habits. The only way is to strengthen the individual on a physiological level from inside, and spontaneously the individual finds that he just doesn't want to do these things anymore.
The craving for the drugs just isn't there when I meditate regularly.
With TM, I have a calmness, and I have an awareness, and I'm motivated from my own feelings within to do and to leave alcohol and to leave drugs off someplace.
In 1974, I introduced and taught unified field-based rehabilitation at Folsom State Prison in California. At that particular institution, they have pill lines which operate twice a day for about 45 minutes, dispensing medication just so individuals can get to sleep at night. After the introduction of our program, research showed that individuals who were taking 2 to 3 hours to get to sleep at night were getting to sleep in 10 to 15 minutes. This indicated a very important breakthrough for reducing hostility and anxiety, which leads to violence in prisons.
I'd say 4 weeks after I've been meditating, I was sitting in a chair during the day and I said, gee, I slept good last night. Then it occurred to me that I had slept 3 good nights.
We have taken the findings from 60 independently conducted research studies and analyzed them together in one larger study and compared the results of the Transcendental Meditation technique and a number of other rehabilitation and relaxation and personal improvement methodologies, including many types of meditation. We found that looking across all of those studies and looking at them in many different ways, that the TM technique was at least twice as potent as the other meditation techniques, as the other relaxation techniques, and the other personality improvement treatments.
What we have is a way of not only eliminating existing stresses in the nervous systems of students, of inmates of correctional institutions, of people in any sphere of life, but of giving them an education which trains them not to perform those actions which create stress in their life.
In Vermont, there's a work release program in which group practice of the TM technique is part of the job. Contractors and employers report noticing fewer mistakes, greater teamwork, more reliability, and improved problem solving. Inmates are learning practical vocational and social skills more quickly.
TM, as I see it, is basically an inner skill, and it's absolutely essential that they gather some of the skills that TM teaches.
This pre- and post-release program has been effective in assisting inmates to successfully re-enter the community. Dr. Charles Alexander describes his research on the effect of the TM program on human development in Walpole State Prison.
When we thought and applied TM as this adult developmental technology, that it proved even beyond our wildest expectation as an extremely powerful mechanism for releasing human development in the prisons.
If a student is calm and open and confident, they're more open to learning. And these are characteristics that develop with the practice of TM technique.
I'm very used to want to learn things instead of just, ignore things and learn about them. I do a lot more reading too, and I think that's because of TM. I never used to read a lot.
And what we found was that prisoners who were, half of our group were murderers, a third of them were heroin addicts. Their education had ended in the 9th grade. They weren't a group that was ripe for unfreezing human development. What we found was that in 1 year, the prisoners went up more on a measure of cognitive and social development, the best measure available in psychology. They went up more in 1 year than college students do in 4 years. And they did it at an age when development ordinarily doesn't change.
Rudy De Leon, Special Assistant to the Attorney General, former Deputy Secretary, Youth and Adult Correctional Agency, California.
Dr. Alexander's study in Massachusetts and Dr. Blake's very thorough studies in California showed consistent results. During the first year after release, there were 56% fewer new convictions involving inmates who had learned the TM technique. There was 40% less total recidivism, including revocation of parole during the first year. And significantly, a lower recidivism rate for the entire 5 years for which figures are available.
The legislature is concerned with the cost not only of prosecuting people who commit crimes, but the cost to the people who pay the taxes for the whole system, the cost of maintaining the family of people who are incarcerated, the unknown cost to the victims.
Now, one would come to the conclusion that if you took 1,000 inmates who had actively participated in the program, there would be a cost saving of $2 million in housing alone. That is, for the inmates who had not returned to prison. Now, this does not include or take into consideration other factors, like the cost of crime to the victim and the victim's family, or the welfare cost to the state because of incarceration of the breadwinner.
Several hundred studies have verified the holistic benefits of the practice of the TM technique and the more advanced TM City program. And a number of these studies have shown quite clearly that with these programs, there's actually a marked physiological improvement in the individual's response to stress. In a correctional environment, there's obviously an enormous amount of stress, and it's well known that stress speeds up the aging process. And the recent research in the TM and TM City program has shown that these techniques can actually reverse this whole process of biological aging. And when we talk about aging, we can distinguish chronological aging, which is measured in terms of number of years, with biological aging, which is measured quite differently. It's measured on certain physiological functions. We know that chronological and biological aging generally proceed together. We anticipate that as the person grows older, there are certain changes. Blood pressure goes up, cholesterol levels increase, along with a loss of memory and, say, an increase in various sleep disturbances. With the regular practice of the TM program, these problems have been shown to decrease. In fact, there are maybe 30 or more different physiological measures of the whole process of aging which have been shown to improve with the TM and TM City program. And one recent study which really summarizes all of these results showed very specifically through a measure of biological aging that in people that have been practicing the TM program over 5 years, that they had an average biological age of 12 years younger than their chronological age. This is very clear evidence that the aging process is either slowed down or actually reversed through the TM technique. I would expect it to be a great relief to anyone who's in this situation of high stress in a prison setting where the whole process of aging is obviously being accelerated to start practicing the TM program and actually see this reversal of aging, experience it for themselves.
Vermont correctional staff have an opportunity to attend weekend residence courses where they practice a more extended program to obtain deeper rest, dissolve accumulated stress, and gain greater intellectual understanding of their experience with the technique.
I think the work is going twice as well as it does ordinarily. The residence course was just fantastic. I think the glow is going to remain for quite some time.
The course in itself was very relaxing. The participants were members from the probation and parole, other correctional officers.
Individuals practicing the TM technique have a calming effect through direct interaction with others. They also create coherence in their environment through a field effect of consciousness. A field phenomenon is a means by which action or information is communicated to a distance, linking seemingly separate objects. A familiar example of a field effect is the broadcasting and receiving of radio waves. Although the waves are unseen, they cause a motion in the electrons of receiving antennas distant from the broadcast tower. In 1983, articles appeared in scientific publications concerning a new theory in physics, in which all of natural law is incorporated into a single unified field. Dr. John Hagelin, chairman of the physics department at MIU, has published over 30 articles in the area of unified quantum field theories.
Since the fundamental properties of the unified field are identical to those of consciousness in its self-referral state, it is natural to conclude that the unified field of natural law and the field of pure consciousness are equivalent. This is easily verified through the Transcendental Meditation technique, which opens human awareness to the direct experience of pure consciousness, where consciousness is found identified with the unified field of all the laws of nature.
Recent discoveries in physics have been dealing with the concept of the unified field, a concept that Einstein explored many years ago. It's not a difficult concept to understand. It's really quite simple. It means things are connected. There are natural laws. Gravity is one of these natural laws. We all share gravity. It's very simple to see how natural laws connect with one another. We also share consciousness. And it's a natural law that we can experience the quieter levels of consciousness and produce coherence for the individual and society.
When we see the crime rate go up in a particular population, it means that there's more stress in the collective consciousness, which is broken out in these specific crimes. But the criminal himself is not the only one that's responsible. Everybody who's stressed in society has contributed to the crime rate in the society in which he lives. And so it's a responsibility of everyone to have a technique to reduce stress in oneself and therefore create an increased coherent influence in the collective consciousness of society. And this is what's been found with Transcendental Meditation. Many very well-controlled studies have shown that when 1% of a city population practices Transcendental Meditation, that the crime rate goes down.
An 11-year study in the USA showed that the crime rate decreased 89% in 24 cities after 1% of the city's population learned the TM technique. In matched control cities, crime rate increased 54% beyond their previous trend. This is known as the Maharishi 1% effect. Susan W. Gore, Board of Directors W.L. Gore and Associates, funded the statewide unified field-based rehabilitation program in Vermont.
W.L. Gore and Associates has been successful because we cherish the creativity of our people. And also because we can identify whether an idea is useful or not.
W.L. Gore and Associates is a rapidly growing high-technology multinational firm that produces Gore-Tex for the space shuttle suits, gear for demanding environments on Earth, and a diversity of electronic and medical products.
Unified field-based rehabilitation is a useful technology for unfolding human development. And that's the reason I funded the Vermont Transcendental Meditation Correctional Program.
As a professional in the field of corrections and human services for almost 20 years, the word leadership has grown to have great significance to me. Leadership means being able to take the initiative, having the ability and the courage and the integrity to make a decision which transforms our institutions, which have had a history of failure, into institutions which are successful.
Psychological studies of great leaders have shown that they are people who are more in tune with the silent stratas of their own inner consciousness. This attunement with this inner silent level of consciousness is developed through the Transcendental Meditation program. And I think Maharishi's great genius has been to bring out the knowledge that this total potential of natural law, the unified field discovered by modern physics, is identical with the silent inner nature of human nature, that human nature and nature in general are not two different things, but are the same thing.
Dr. Curly King, Director General, Institute of World Leadership, Maharishi International University College of Natural Law. Former Secretary General, Caribbean Economic Community.
Now, there's not a single leader in this world who does not need rest. Every single one. Most of them work 15, 16 hours a day, in my own experience. Now, by allowing them to have this deep rest, without doing anything else for the leader, it improves his effectiveness. Because more rested, clarity of thought, greater imagination, he performs better.
I practice the TM technique, and there's no question that it has helped me relax, also to think more clearly, to immediately recover from a stressful encounter, and to make effective in-depth decisions
although it will focus on the very top leaders in a country, its principles can be applied, and it will deal with leaders at any level. And in a very rudimentary sense, one can see the supervisor of a dozen or 15 people in a single institution as a leader. He is a leader, and the principles of leadership will apply also to him.
Initially, why I decided to learn the technique, because it's a very stressful position, and it's well known for burnout. And I didn't want to burn out. I wanted to be able to continue in the position and be able to do a good job at it.
Well, you don't get one ready for normal social activity by removing him from society, by isolating him in a cage, by surrounding him with other malcontents and deviants, by subjecting him to all forms of depravity, deprivations, indignities, by intensifying that whole enforcement syndrome. True rehabilitation comes from within.
Rehabilitation is the state of the mind, and the only person who's going to rehabilitate himself is himself.
I'd like to see all the staff meditate, and I'd like to see all the inmates. I'd like to see everybody do it.
TM tries to help them help themselves rehabilitate, and that's about the only way it's going to get done if you do it yourself. And TM does help.
It is important to true leadership in penology that it be recognized that not only the inmate, but that society in general must be rehabilitated.
Anyone with vision can change society for the better. It doesn't matter where he or she is located in society. One single person who comprehends the usefulness of certain actions can improve society.
When unified field-based rehabilitation is implemented in prisons throughout the world, those deep pockets of stress will be removed from society. And it's by producing coherence in those centers of stress that the incoherence in society will become minimal and eventually disappear. This is the fulfillment of unified field-based rehabilitation in the prisons. And that is rehabilitation throughout society, not of pathology, but of the restoration of the creative intelligence within every person to its full dignity and full stature. This is the development of the full potential of the human being. This is the purpose of unified field-based rehabilitation.